Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Drew Brown, and my wingman, my man, the number one guy I know, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother? Welcome to the Wingman Show, where we're floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown. My wingman, my friend, my main man who watches my six is Dr. Paul Thompson. How are you, Brother Paul, today?
Oh, Commander Drew, I'm doing very, very well today. It's good to see you again. Looks like you're back on terra firma. I like your shirt. Are you a polo player?
No, but I have polo shirts.
Okay. I've never seen anybody play polo actually in real life. I guess it's done.
Yeah, it's done by kings and queens and very rich people. But this polo shirt, did it come from Ralph Lauren or did it come from China? That's the question.
Both. But I'm from Queens, but I never saw it played there. But enough of that.
All right. Well, let's start this puppy off with a quote of the day. The time to be happy is now. The place to be happy is here. The way to be happy is to make others so. That's by Robert G. Ingersoll. One more time. The time to be happy is now. The place to be happy is here. And the way to be happy is to make others so. And that's so true, Dr. Paul. I love to make people laugh. It's one of my favorite things to do. What about you?
Yeah, it's better to make him laugh than to cry. And when I hear that phrase, it sounds like basically I interpret that as take advantage of the life that you have, and do it right now if you can.
Yeah, you're here right now. You're nowhere else.
Right.
Be where your feet are, and that's right here, right now. And be in the present. All right, Dr. Paul, let's give a shout out to a group that is, it just changed my life when I was a young person, and that's Sly and the Family Stone. My God, Sly and the Family Stone, they had so many great hits. Matter of fact, the two things that I remember Sly and the Family Stone about the most is I believe I was in seventh or eighth grade at James J. Reynolds Junior High School in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and I was caught dancing on the table in school singing Dance to the Music. The teacher wrote me up and sent me to the principal. That was number one. Number two, I went to see Sly and the Family Stone at 14 or 15 years old in Madison Square Garden. And to date, the greatest concert I ever saw. What do you think about Sly and the Family Stone there, Dr. Paul?
They're fantastic. I never saw them live. It'd been great. I didn't get to never went to set foot in Madison Square Garden until I think I was in my 20s. So you were really blessed. Yeah, Sly was tremendous. I remember I bought his album called Stand. I can still see the album cover. It's one of those albums that I liked every song on it, which is unusual. Usually like, two or three, maybe one. I like every single song. Fantastic. Now you were dancing on the table. You know what I thought of when you said you were dancing on the tables? My mind
What?
just flashed back to Michael Jackson during one of his trials at the end of the day, or maybe before he even went into the courthouse. He gets up on a car and he does like a little dance before he goes in the court, which I didn't think was a good idea, but I still remember that. So you and Michael Jackson had something in common. Yeah, Sly was tremendous. I liked everything. Do you remember a guy? He had a number of people in his group. Some were family members. Remember a guy named Larry Graham? You remember?
Oh, yeah, Graham Central Station,
Graham
a
Central Station.
super bad bass player. I mean, he was really good. And I did want to say this about somebody actually wrote, a music critic wrote that there's two types of black music before Sly and the Family Stone, and black music after Sly and the Family Stone, because he brought a psychedelic funk to it that just we've never heard before, Paul. Have,
Right, and your one of your heroes, George Clinton, I think he got a lot of stuff from him because of that same. I think Sly was like on the leading edge of that. But Larry Graham is still around. He still performs. He was tight with Prince. I think they had a falling out. That's why Larry Graham had his own formed his own group. But he was a bass player too and a baritone. He did the
Well,
same.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry to say, Dr. Paul, that the great Sly Stone passed away, but he really had major problems with drugs. And in the end, he really, really looked bad. He stopped going to concerts on time. They were rioting. Sometimes he didn't make concerts at all. And I'm sorry to say that legacy just will live on for a little bit. His music outweighs all of that. But drugs will kill and destroy, and has done so to many performers.
Yes, no matter how much money you have. If I could throw something in real, I guess it's related, but there's another person who's gone. His name is Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys was an old group. Used to listen to them on the radio all the time when you had actually very few choices. And I liked a lot of their stuff. But again, to piggyback on what you said, drugs will eventually get us all. So I never joke about drugs and alcohol. I haven't seen anything good come from excess consumption of either.
No, and, when the Beach Boys when Brian Wilson died, I didn't know he had a drug problem, and he also had, uh they said he had mental issues also.
Mm.
He was these guys are superstars at 20 and 21 and 22 years old, and that's a lot to take, I'll be honest with you. To be a young person and to have that much fame and money and power can really ruin you. And what it does is, I grew up around Ali. It can bring around a lot of people that are not good for you. All right. Well, let's start off this show. The title of this show is The Good and Evil of Chat GPT. Now, you're much more familiar with this, and you actually brought me into the fold of AI, to be honest with you, Dr. Paul. But is everyone cheating their way through school? Chat GPT has changed academia. We were talking about it. This Chat GPT is excellent if you want to write a letter, if you want to write an essay. I mean, it gives you everything. And I'll be honest with you, Paul, you turned me on to it, and now I almost can't live without it. Matter of fact, I just bought the subscription to Chat GPT, and I'm kind of cheap, so I really do like it. What
Yeah, you are well, you're not cheaping everything, but you're cheaping some things, and it's that powerful. I don't think everybody's cheating their way through school, but it makes it a lot easier to do it in something, I guess in the humanities. In the sciences, probably not nearly as much. But I have it on good authority that again there are other language models, but uh ways to detect if the thing is human or not. In fact, I got one on my computer. It's called percent human. I don't know if how accurate it is. You put something in it, it'll say how much of this is by a person, how much is by the machine. It's pretty accurate. And this is something I got for free. So you can't cheat your way through everything. Well, number one, it's wrong for a lot of reasons. Number two, you can get caught by somebody smarter than you.
Well, Paul, I mean, we were discussing this. This Chat GPT, it is getting smarter and smarter every day. And I was figuring, well, what happens when you tell Chat GPT, I only want an 81 on this essay? I don't want it to be perfect. I want some words misspelled. I want some language to be incorrect, a little bit of English language to be incorrect. What happens when you can talk it into not getting detected?
You can do that. And I look at the Chat GPT, you can relate to this. I think it's kind of like your dog in a way. It's like your dog really wants to please you, so it'll do things that it thinks you want them to do. A lot of times, sometimes we chat is one of them. There are a bunch of them, but it'll give you information that's not right, but it looks perfect. I asked her some personal stuff about me, an incident I had many years ago, and I gave the date, the time, blah blah. Do you know of this? Oh yes, and it detailed it all wrong. I said, "No, no, no." Yeah, and I added a couple things. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry I made a mistake." And then the rest of it was right. But if you could easily go to the first answer, which was completely off. You know what that really means? Chat GPT means something. When they
Really?
say it, do you know what the Chat GPT stands for?
No, I do not.
Okay. The chat means that it's basically it identifies the kind of robot that you're talking to, and they can talk to you back. The GPT is generative pre-trained transformer. Generative meaning that it'll generate text. Pre-trained, it has what they call this large language model, LLM. In other words, someone fed it all kinds of information. And the transformer, it will transform its language with all this stuff that's shoved into it. It'll transform it to human language.
Wow, that's
Generative pre-trained transformer. I just found that
Wow,
out
that's
yesterday.
very wow, that's very interesting, Dr. Paul. I would have never known what ChatGPT is. And I do want to say this. We're not just talking about ChatGPT. We're talking about Perplexity or DeepSeek or any of the AI models. I'm just using ChatGPT as a centerpiece because that's what I have. And I wouldn't say that I am cheap, but what happened was when I was using ChatGPT, they give you a free model.
Right,
And if you use too much of it, it stops until the next day. Well, I
right,
was writing a letter actually to Virgin Voyages, that cruise line that I love, and it stopped. It says you can't start again until tomorrow. And I just hit pay. And so now I pay $20 a month, but it is really excellent. So, my question to you, Dr. Paul, is how can academia stop this? You and I were speaking, and one of the ways we thought of is now you could just have oral exams and nothing written. What do you think about that?
yeah, yeah. That's a way to do it. Particularly things that can be explained. For example, our flight training or whatever. At least as commercial pilots, our examinations were we you had to do an oral. You had to do a so-called an
Oh
FAA oral,
God.
which
Well, I
was like
remember that.
it could be that was a super large language model there. It could ask you all kinds of stuff. So that narrowed down a lot of things, and you're pretty much at the mercy of the interviewer or the person giving you the test. You just prepared as best you could. So I think I see that coming. Of course, what it also means is that those who develop courses are going to have to adjust their courses. So it's more than A, B, and C. Yeah, because I mean, the reality is, have you ever written a paper with it?
I haven't written a paper, but I've written some really good letters with it.
That
And I've
that's
given
right.
it all and I've given it all the information that I wanted in that letter, and it put it together beautifully. I mean, it really did. It was excellent.
Yeah, yeah, it's elegant, and everybody will sound like they're geniuses. So that's I think it's in the sciences going to be it's going to be hard to GPT your way through chemistry. I say that now, that may not be true in 6 months. I could be wrong about that.
That's true. You know, we, Dr. Paul and we push something very, very strongly, and that's something called STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. And anybody who can hear our voice, if you're looking for a new career or you're going to school looking for something to major in, STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math, because that is the future. All right, Dr. Paul, let's talk about some good news. Everybody hears bad news, and that's not what the Wingman show's about. We're about promoting something good in this country and on this planet, actually. Well, how about this? Smoking rates have declined in America and England, and they're expecting that smoking will go down to just 5% by the year 2035. Now, I know you've never smoked, but smoking, I mean, it brings all kind of serious, serious complications, medical complications, including cancer and heart attacks and so many other things smoking can do for you. What do you think about smoking actually coming down here in this country?
Well, that's good. That's just going to have positive health effects, and I've never smoked, never interested. Actually, I'm kind of allergic to smoke and strong fumes. I've always had that. Had to deal with it. Uh, I'd say it's good on them. There's no advantage to doing that. From what I've seen, most people pick up the habit when they're teenagers, and for a long time that was a cool thing to do. Even on Hollywood glamorized it from the silent movie era. So what the beautiful people were doing, what those in high society were doing, they would just drag on a cigarette. And in the later years, like, maybe that's not such a good thing. Do you remember Joe Camel?
Yes, because my mother used to smoke Camels. and they were filterless cigarettes. They were as strong as they can get. And do you remember that they used to have commercials with doctors saying that Camels are the best cigarette to have? They would actually have doctors smoking in commercials. Remember that?
I do remember that, but do you think they were all real doctors or folks who just had a lab coat on and a stethoscope? You know, you can go buy one of those.
I think they were all actors. I don't think a real doctor would stand there and smoke, but doctors did smoke. Doctors really did smoke. And like you said, smoking used to be cool. And what's happened is smoking's not so cool in our movies and television. They're really not smoking too much. And I have to say this, I used to be a smoker. And one of the hardest things that I ever quit, Dr. Paul, was nicotine. It was super, super hard. And for anybody out there who wants to quit, I can just tell you how I did it. I did it with patches, I did it with gum. I actually used something so I would continue to have some nicotine in my body because that urge to smoke is incredible. And in the Facts in Life, I called smoking the epitome of addiction because you don't even get high from it. All you do is get back to normal.
Let me ask you, how long did it take you to actually quit after you started quitting?
Well, the first thing I had to do was make up my mind that that's what I wanted to do. And after I did that, I started wearing patches and chewing the Nicorette gum. And I would mix it with good gum. And so I would chew it every time I wanted a cigarette. And I would say it was a couple of months, but maybe by the third month, one day I put that gum in my mouth and I almost threw up. And that was the last day I needed nicotine. So it's a very hard thing to do. And it's terrible what the cigarettes companies have done, making it so addictive. So, how about this good news? You know, you and I traveled all over the world, and people smoke a lot in Asia and a lot in Europe. Well, in France, they just banned smoking from public areas and parks and anywhere near a school. How about that? You know that they smoke overseas.
Yeah, do you remember going I remember going to Paris years ago and all the restaurants were full of smoke for a long time. Then I noticed it started to trail off and I didn't see it towards the end of my career. But yeah, they do that. Do you remember they used to do cigarette FedEx used to do cigarette charters? Were you a part of that?
No, you told me about that. You're telling me that you flew big ass planes full of cigarettes over to Asia and Europe. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, they had a charter. They used to run a charter, I think it was like 2 days a week to, Japan. It would start in, I think Greensboro, North Carolina, end up in Narita, Japan. It was twice a week. It was a fully 2 fully loaded DC-10s of cigarettes. They really would like the cigarettes there. I flew that maybe 2 or 3 times. And I think, "Wow, that's" they were like iPhones to them.
There's a lot of goddamn cigarettes in a DC-10, in the belly of a DC-10. That's a lot of smoking. Well, I'm glad that it's turning around. That's the good news. Everybody out there, thank you so, so much for supporting us. Thank you for watching us on YouTube, on listening to us on Apple Podcasts, watching our shorts on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you so much for that. We truly do appreciate it. And if you know, we have a newsletter that comes from our website, wingmenshow.com. That's wingmenshow.com. That's WINGMENSHOW.com. We have a newsletter, and this week's newsletter is how to use artificial intelligence to your advantage. Also, on that newsletter, we have something called a frequent flow line. And that's something where you can ask Dr. Paul and myself any question you want, and we'll try to get to it on the air. But before we go into our frequent flow line, look at them badass jets we got behind us. Behind Dr. Paul, those are the mighty Blue Angels in F-18 Hornets. And behind me is the jet that I flew. That's an A-6 Intruder, fully loaded with bombs. Super bad jets. So, Dr. Paul, let's get to our frequent flow line today.
Mm.
A young man, 30 years old, from Chalmette, Louisiana. He writes, I have three uncles who I love dearly. They are all obese. They are all going to get sick and die too young. It is really a shame, and I want to do something to help. Please help me, Wingman. Wow, what a letter. Dr. Paul, I'll throw it to you first. That's really deep, and it's very true.
Yeah, well, Chalmette, Louisiana, that sounds familiar. Isn't that near that's near New Orleans.
It sure is. Very
Okay.
good, Dr. Paul.
So I'm thinking, they have some really good food down there. That's not an excuse for anything, but food, too much food is bad for you. You said all three uncles. I'm going to guess they are probably raised in the same family, maybe not. When people are obese, it's tough to address that. But maybe you just have to do it directly. Tell them your feelings. Hey, you said they're too young, probably younger than we are. Hey, you need to lose weight. They probably have no idea how, we talk about diet, exercise, but anything else, it's hard to really start. Tell them to start by walking a bit more, trying to walk, trying to do something physical. I always say move, and eating on smaller plates. Same crap, make it a smaller portion. See if they can reduce it a little bit, a little bit. I do that myself, actually, even when I'm cheating. It does help. See if you can initially start to get them to eat a bit less and move a bit more and see how that occurs and see what the reaction is. I'd start there.
That's an excellent answer. The problem is, Dr. Paul, that I have some family members that are obese. And what you do is I went and talked to them just like you said. But how many times can you tell them when you come back and you see nothing has been done? That's the hurtful part. How many times can you they all speak English, so they all understood what I was saying. They all look in the mirror and they all can see it. Now, what I do to help people if they want to start losing weight is I tell them, let's start off with one thing at a time, just like you said. Just start drinking water. No more sodas, no more iced teas, Arnold Palmers, all that. Just start drinking water. And then maybe next week, stop the sugar. Sugar is really bad for you. Sugar is just like crack, as far as I'm concerned. It's poison. And then you go on to maybe the next week or a couple of weeks after that, stop eating so many carbs. Stop eating so many white carbs. That's the problem. If you want to fill yourself up, there's brown rice, there's quinoa, there are substitutes. The big thing, just like when I stopped smoking cigarettes, you have to want to do this. And now they even have shots, that you can take that will suppress your appetite, Dr. Paul. So my problem is after you tell a family member this and they know that you love them and they know the situation, what do you do after that? Well, you have to believe that there's a power greater than yourselves, I think, and God will take care of them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. Do you think it would be a good idea if this young man, maybe you start instead of tell him this stuff, maybe you do some of the exercise with them.
There
Maybe
you go.
go walk with them.
That's an excellent idea.
Just
And exercise, you and I exercise all the time now. We've finally got our SHIT together. But the thing with exercising is don't exercise too hard in the beginning. Just start walking. Walk 1 block. Tomorrow, walk 2 blocks. The
right.
point is consistency. That's where exercise comes in.
I agree.
All right, great. Now, it's time for a Wingman PSA from the 11 Facts in Life. Under fact number 7, use common sense and moderation. Under fact number 7, use common sense and moderation. And Dr. Paul, I believe that's what you were just talking about with using smaller plates, moderation.
Yeah, it's something small. It's easy to do, and yeah, again, getting back to if you can get them to stop drinking soft drinks, that's liquid sugar. That'll probably make a tremendous impact right away, with or without walking. I bet they're doing a lot of these pretty drinks and things like that. Yeah, cut that out. You know something yeah, have you ever had sweet tea? I've never had it. I've been in the South 50 years.
Yes, I've had sweet tea, and that is very sweet, Southern sweet tea, and they're addicted to it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Cut that out, or at least, or cut again, cut it down. If
Or
you got to
start
do it,
using things like monk fruit. Use monk fruit. It is exactly like sugar.
right, right.
All right. How about the gouge? What's the gouge? Well, in the Navy, the gouge is shit that you need to know, but nobody tells you. Well, here on the Wingman Show, we give gouge and we give good gouge. How about I tell you the top 10 cities to live in? How about that, Dr. Paul?
Sure, I'll
All
poke me
right.
one of them.
And then we'll go through, see if you lived in any of these places. The number one city to live in America is Naples, Florida. Two, Boise, Idaho. Colorado Springs, Colorado, Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, Huntsville, Alabama, Virginia Beach, Virginia, Austin, Texas, and Boulder, Colorado. Those are the top 10 cities to live in today. Have you been to any of these cities? And what do you think about that, Dr. Paul?
I've been to a bunch of them. Haven't lived in any of them. Spent some time in Colorado Springs. My daughter's going through the Air Force Academy. That's a cool little place and pretty easy to know where you are. Everything is laid out in north, south, east, and west. I understood it. That's a good place. Huntsville, Alabama is cool. Spend time there. That's kind of a sleeper. You know what's down there? A lot of NASA stuff, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Have you been down there?
I haven't been to Huntsville. They have a whole space center down there, just like Houston, don't they?
Yes, they do. And they do astronaut training there too. Got a lot of PhDs in the area. There's a lot of research in the Huntsville area. It's kind of a sleeper. It's in the middle of nowhere, kind of hard to get to. There's no major roads there. You have to take back roads there. The other places I've visited the Carolinas and never been to Boise was okay. Never been to Naples, Florida. I've heard good things about it though.
Well, I've been to Naples. It's a beautiful city. But I actually lived in number 8 in Virginia Beach, Virginia. When I got A6 Intruders, I was then stationed in Oceana, and that's in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And I actually raised my children there for a while. So Virginia Beach, Virginia was excellent. The only problem they had there back then, and I'm sure it's even worse now, was traffic. You
Mm,
know, we live in the Atlanta area, so we know all about traffic. But traffic was horrible in Virginia Beach, but it was a beautiful area to live. I also spent a lot of time in Austin, Texas. That's where both of my children went to college, University of Texas, hook 'em horns. And
cool.
so I spent a lot of time in Austin, and Austin is a rockin' city in Texas. It's not very Texas like, it's a real musical town, and they have a lot of fun in Austin, Texas, Dr. Paul.
Cool. I've heard that the gold guitarist, remember Stevie Ray Vaughan?
Yes, what a super bad guitar player.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I remember seeing him something was called Austin City Limits. He performed on that, and I started. They had some really good acts on Austin City Limits. I enjoyed watching that.
I was always impressed with Stevie Ray Vaughan. He's the only one who could play Jimi Hendrix note for note.
I
The
agree.
only one I've ever heard who could play just like him. The good thing is that Jimi Hendrix made that up and Stevie Ray Vaughan was just following him. But Stevie Ray Vaughan has a whole cadre of wonderful mega hits.
Yes.
All right. The name of our show is called The Wingman Show. And the reason it's called The Wingman Show is because we like to emphasize and highlight people who help other people. Boy, do I have a wingman for you today, Dr. Paul. What if I told you that one man was responsible for teaching 10,000 people to swim? He wanted to end drowning in his home country of India, and he lived in the Indian state of Kerala. His name was Saji Velasaro, and he lived in the Indian state of Kerala, and 15 kids died drowning in a river near him, and it propelled him to start teaching people how to swim. You read this story. Tell me what you think about it.
I think that's tremendous. He said, I guess what got him into action was some uh, some school children and their teacher or teachers were in a boat going from, I guess, point A to point B around that area. They overturned and apparently they all drowned. Nobody could swim. And that got him to starting his own club. I think he worked with his his relatives to make sure they knew how to swim. And then one thing led to another, and more people joined him, and he eventually founded his own swimming club, which is tremendous. Let me ask you a question. Do you know you spent some time in St. Thomas? Were there people there who lived on the island that didn't know how to swim?
100,000% yes. There are many people who live on islands surrounded by water that don't know how to swim. And this is very funny, but it's true. My mother only gave me one piece of marriage advice. I swear. She said, do not marry anybody who cannot swim.
That's unusual. What did she ever say why she said thought that way?
Well, the earth is two-thirds water, and anybody who hasn't learned how to swim usually mentally is not aware of other things around them. Learning how to swim is one of the mandatory things you should teach a kid as he grows up. So I think that's why she said it. But, this guy in India, he says you can go from non-swimming to swimming in 16 lessons. And he really didn't teach you how to swim so much as he taught you how to survive in the water. Because the river that those kids drowned in was called the Periyar River, and it had really, really strong currents. And so what he did is he made lanes from kindergarten to doctorate. The doctorate lanes were in the very, very strong currents of the river, where the kindergarten lanes were kind of not. And that's how you started off. I just thought that was very interesting. But yes, there are a lot of people in the islands that don't know how to swim. Do you know why? Why would you think that is, Dr. Paul?
That was fear because I had a cousin of mine who didn't know how to swim at all in Jamaica, surrounded by water. He was actually taught by another cousin from New York on vacation who went down and actually literally taught him to swim. I couldn't believe the story. So yeah, it's true. And he actually ended up being a good swimmer. But sometimes, some people have exposed more exposure than others.
Well, we were born on an island, the island of Manhattan,
Yeah.
and we know
I was on Long Island, so
how. All right. Everybody out there who can hear my voice, anything that you think is important, whatever you think is beautiful, and especially whatever makes you happy, may you have that today and forever. I pray for peace.
I pray for peace too, Commander Drew, and it's good to see you. I missed the megaphone for the last few weeks, so it's good to hear that again. We appreciate all those who listen, like, and share our message. Please give us a 5-star review if you're listening on a podcast platform. A thumbs up on YouTube would help the algorithm. We look forward to seeing you again, and give us a shout on the frequent flow line. We'd like to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners, too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it, just press it gently and use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men and women.